I want to first welcome everybody. This is our first, meaning our inaugural Rural Mental Health Town Forum. So everybody give everybody a round of applause. We're so glad you're here. We never thought we would get this ballroom packed as much as we did, so we're very happy about it. I'm very happy to see all the smiling faces today. My name is Adam Metz. I'm the Assistant Director and over Training and Supervision for our Counseling Center here at Texas A&M University Commerce. So I'm gonna have to hold the mic. I can't stoop down, and I need my glasses. So I want to personally thank you for being here today to discuss a very important topic for all of us in the room, helping to create a coalition of regional partners to identify challenges and help seek solutions in the area of rural mental health. Just some essential housekeeping items to share with you. Most importantly, the restrooms to the back, to the right, left. I'm sorry, to the left, just a little bit through the doors, directly in front of me. Breakfast is out kind of to the side, off to the left, and there's also drinks and coffee over here for you as well. You'll notice on your name badge that you have a number. Make sure that number corresponds to the table that you're sitting at. It's very important for our roundtable discussions later on. Everybody has an assigned seat. We did that by design. We also have a lot of community agencies and partners with us today with resource tables. I encourage you to pay a visit with them. It makes it and it helps expand your awareness and resources to our local community and the resources that are available. And I must also mention there's some of the tables, especially over here from the Rotary Club, that you can sign up for the free mental health first aid training and assist training. Very important trainings to have. So if you get a chance, check that out. Schedule for today is on rotation with our slides. You'll see that. There is a QR code on there. But we want you to wait until the end of the event to complete that QR code. There was one at the front, and that's for check-in. I would encourage you to go ahead and do that as well, because at the end of this forum, and within a month or so after we complete this, there will be a report sent out to everybody who signed up so that you'll have all that information at your fingertips. I want to first recognize our inaugural planning committee. Shirley Weddle, Suicide Prevention and Brain Health E-Rotary Club, Dr. Tony Dickenshees from Soldiers Angels, Dr. Elizabeth Wishera, she's Assistant Professor, Texas A&M Commerce Department of Health and Human Performance, Amy Burton from Red River Valley Veterans Memorial, Dr. Nick Patras, Executive Director of the Counseling Center and Student Health Services, and of course myself. So let's give them a round of applause, everybody. It was a lot of effort and work to get to this point, a lot of moving parts, so I appreciate all the help that they gave to us. I also want to recognize our Counseling Center staff, Jordan Lanham, Amanda Spellmeyer, for their tireless efforts in helping create all those cool little badges that you're wearing and all the information. They worked very hard on it. Also our clinical staff, Dr. Tina Young, Susie Gomez, Juliana DeWitt, Hillary Becerra, Willie Johnson, Ron Jenkins, and Avery Wageman. Please give them a round of applause. I wanted to share just a little bit of my own personal journey before we move on. I've been working in rural mental health for a very long time. I won't say how many years, but just quite a few years. We'll just put it that way. And during my time, I've had the opportunity and also the privilege to work in lots of different areas of mental health. So everything from adolescent to outpatient, hospitalization, healthcare, all of those areas. And I'm so glad that at the end of my, well, I hate saying end because that's kind of a bad way to put it, but at the end of my career, I get to finish up at A&M University Commerce, which I'm a proud alum of, so twice, I might say. But over the years of working in mental health, there were all kinds of challenges that we went through with managed care, the transition from all of that, and the pendulum always swung back and forth. But there was a long, hot, dry summer, many years of, let's just say, lack of providers, availability, accessibility. And because of that, there was the spark that lit the fire, and that was COVID-19. Anybody remember that little pandemic we all kind of went through? But that was sort of what put everything in overdrive as far as mental health. And as a result of that, everything changed. The whole landscape of mental health changed during that time. In March of 2020, our center, we talked about, we kind of tossed around the idea of telemental health and would it be practical for us to do. In 1 week, we turned our center around and were able to continue provide services for the students. And it was pretty incredible to see that work happen. So many of you who know me know that I'm a big proponent of training, training new therapists, new clinicians, getting them out there and sort of getting a handle on sort of the mental health crisis we have nationally. And if you haven't known, or you haven't looked around, it is a crisis. Not enough providers, not enough accessibility, and in the rural areas, it's even more extreme. So that's one of the challenges we want to take care of today. My journey as a therapist. So this is very personal to me. I always think of, as a therapist, and I first started in human services and kind of worked my way up over the years, but it's always about the individual first. But then it's that individual within the larger context of their social community and their families, and then outward into the communities. And I think that's part of what we're trying to achieve today is how do we take what we help individuals with and within their social constructs and then put that into the community and have us all work together. In our profession, we a lot of times talk about the ripple effect. And so the things that we do, the lives that we touch, they have a rippling effect outwards. And it's that ripple effect we feel individually as a human. We also feel it when we help that person connect with others, and in a broader context, the community. And I can't stress it enough. If you work in human services and you're a therapist, you kind of know what I'm talking about. For those people out there that are future therapists, that are social workers, counselors in training, you'll experience it soon. So. Well, enough about me. So I just wanted to kind of get that out there first. So in the words of Amy Burton, who is one of our planning committee members, this is the beginning. This is the beginning of something larger that we want to continue on. And before I get the hook to get off here, I'm going to introduce my center director, Dr. Nick Patras. I want you to welcome Dr. Nick Patras, Executive Director of the Counseling Center and Student Health Services, and I want him to come up to stage. He's my colleague and co-conspirator of this event. So welcome, Dr. Patras.
I promise I'll make this brief. Every speaker says that. All right. So I wish that you all could be up here looking out there. First, let me just start with that. To get all of us in the room together from so many different disciplines, different interests about this subject matter, we have literally been planning this for 5 years. And let me tell you, you think, my gosh, you're poor planners if it took you 5 years to do this. I had the privilege of helping write a supplemental budget request 5 years ago where we as an institution asked for a lot of money for rural mental health. And it was referred to as rural mental health. We did not get that supplemental request. That's the bad news. But the seed never went away. It's like we as a rural community, a series of communities, have something unique in this part of the state. Dr. Rudin is going to speak briefly in a moment about the uniqueness of our university being in this area. But the mere fact that we can do something about the challenges of rural mental health. We can make a difference, and that's I think that's what's so important. I want to recognize a number of people who are in this room before we go any further. Dr. Shonda Gibson, who is our Vice Chancellor for the Texas A&M System, is in the house. Thank you, Shonda, for being here. You know, when you go to grad school, you think you'll forget all those people you go to grad school with. I want you all to meet a grad school buddy of mine. Ms. August Weems is a senior advisor to the Rural Mental Health Division of Health and Human Services in Austin, Texas. When you post something on LinkedIn, people pay attention to it. And August is here. Where are you, August? Welcome to Northeast Texas. Dr. Andrea Graham and Dr. Ray Green are deans of the College of Science and Engineering and Education and Human Services, respectively. Dr. Jennifer Schrader is the dean of our graduate school. Ms. Judy Sackville, props to my boss, and also the vice president of the Division of Student Affairs are in the house. Our VP of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, I think, is here. I don't see Dr. Archie. And our vice president and provost, Dr. Tammy Vakahasi, is here. Dr. Vakasi is also a clinician, and then Devin Gerard is our Vice President of Philanthropy and Engagement. We're all in this together, and what I want to do now is bring our president up and let him share some words with you all, and then we'll get started with our keynote presenter. Thank you, Dr. Rudin.
Good morning. It's great to see you all. I got to be honest, I was driving in on the way down from Commerce. I thought, okay, maybe we'll have 30, 40 people here. Look at this. This is outstanding. Congratulations on that. And what an important statement that we are making today about rural mental health in Northeast Texas. So congratulations on that. You know, A&M Commerce, I've been at Commerce for about 4.5 years now. And, you know, we put together we're an institution that I think is uniquely, as Nick mentioned, situated to simultaneously serve the rural and urban needs in Northeast Texas. And you probably heard through the news and so forth that are making these forays into urban DFW, but we will never and will never forsake our roots in rural Northeast Texas for obvious reasons and evidenced by today. You know, one of the first things we did when I came to Commerce was we put together a strategic plan, and we have some latitude in doing that. What are we doing? Who are we going to be? How do we define ourselves? And you find a lot of things that are in strategic plans at higher ed, right? Student preparedness. How are we going to best prepare our students to be competitive in the workforce? Elevate research and those type of things. But one of the critical pieces. And one of our pillars, one of our goals in the plan is to align with the community, okay? How do we leverage the assets of the university for the social, cultural, economic benefit of the region, okay? That's important. That's a tenet that we hold near and dear to our university. But I think we kind of blew it. I think looking back in 2019, we kind of blew that. I think that we thought, as higher ed often does, think we knew best, right? We don't. And we felt that was going to be our statement. I think we're in the process right now, we are in the process right now of revising that strategic plan. And if we ever use that verbiage again, leveraging the assets of the university, it should really read, if we're really focused on the tasks at hand, to leverage the assets of the university for the economic, social, cultural, and health benefits of the region in which we serve. And again, that's why we're here today, okay, to do just that. And when you hear the stories, and I had a chance to talk to my new friend Jana from Hunt County Jail and so forth, and Judge Stovall, everyone has a certain passion about this. I've been in higher ed for about 30 years now, okay? And I got to be honest with you, I've seen initiatives, hundreds of initiatives like this come and go. Don't let this go. Okay? When you talk to people, and I'll use my little corner of the world, our students, our athletes, whoever that may be, mental health is number one. Mental health is on their minds. Do not let this go. You tell me, or you tell Nick, whatever you all need to continue moving this along, you let us know. Because this is going to be absolutely critical, and I'm starting to learn more and more to find out that it's just not the university, it's the entire community. And the community needs, and to think it's a little self-serving to think that we're the only player in this game. We're not. And we may not even be the lead in this initiative, Nick. This group is going to be the lead in this initiative. We just want to do our part to help move the ball down the field. There's a tremendous amount of talent, and I can tell there's a tremendous amount of passion in the room. Do not let it go. So on behalf of the university, thank you so much for coming today. You got a lot of work to do. I'll get off the stage because there's a lot of work to be done. So thank you very much.
In my haste to hurry up my part of this, I forgot to do my most important duty today. If you are a student, would you please stand? Ladies and gentlemen, this is the future. This is a part of solving these problems. So thank you all for being here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now I have the distinct honor and privilege to introduce our keynote presenter, who is going to share a very unique story as well. Taylor Toynes is the co-founder and CEO for Oak Cliff, which he started with students as a first-year teacher. Discouraged by the disparities and inequities his students experienced, and noting that nothing had changed since his childhood, Taylor was compelled to organize the inaugural For Oak Cliff Back to School Festival for his students and the community. The festival drew attention to the community's needs and led to collaborations with system leaders such as the United Way of Metropolitan Dallas. There's the message there. He recognized the need and organized folks to come together. That's what we're doing here. Taylor is committed to the Oak Cliff community and lives in the neighborhood with his family. For his leadership, Taylor has received awards from the United Nations, NAACP, and the Southern Methodist University, to name a few. Taylor and the For Oak Cliff team have won a couple of pretty distinctive awards. One, Teach for America's Social Innovation Award and Echo and Green Fellowship. For Oak Cliff has been recognized by the national news outlets and gained the trust of their most proximal neighbors in the South Oak Cliff community. Taylor is the proud father of Wednesday Toynes and husband of Ariel Toynes. He's a graduate of the University of North Texas and has a master's degree from SMU. Let's give Taylor a warm welcome.
Good morning, y'all. It's a pleasure to be here today with everyone. Pleasure to see all of the students that's present in here today. I think that speaks volumes to what's taking place here at this forum. For one, with this being something as serious as mental health that we're talking about, I'd like to start out with something that I learned, and I would like everybody to just take a second themselves as we're in this space. One day I was just doing some reading and listening to some different videos, and I learned something about gratitude. And I learned that whenever your mind is thinking of things that it's grateful for, it can't possibly think of things it's worried about, that you're stressing about, or things that are just hindering you or bothering you. So for me right now, I would say to all of you all, one, I'm grateful to be alive. I'm grateful to be standing here, able-bodied, able-minded in front of you all, but I want you all to just take a moment to yourselves and just think of some things this morning that you're grateful for. Hope that you all had something to come to mind in that brief second, a brief moment. again, I'm grateful to be in this space. It's amazing to see all these folks in here. You told me it was going to be, a lot of people, and you was right about that. And it's cool to be out here, Northeast Texas. I'm from an area in Dallas, in South Dallas, an area called Oak Cliff. Anyone familiar with Oak Cliff in the room? Already, anybody from Oak Cliff in the room? Okay, you look familiar to me. I don't know, man. Probably crossed paths somewhere at some point. So my background, you all, my professional career, it started at the Dallas County District Attorney's Office, where I worked as a victim's advocate. I'm in the Family Violence Division. And while I was there, I saw a lot of different things. I was the first contact for a victim before they had to actually give their case to a prosecuting attorney. And I'll go back to that later on throughout my conversation with you all, because I don't want to talk to you all. I want to be in community with you all, because y'all know way more about this topic than I do. I can just share with you all my experiences, and hopefully we can learn something from one another. That makes sense to y'all today? Already, cool. Well, one of the main hopes and goals that I had, because after I left the DA's office, I went into the profession of being a teacher. And while I taught, I was, we had these things like DOLs, these demonstrations of learning that we had to leave the classroom with. And today, what I hope to leave this space with is that we can all have a sense of understanding. And that's something that's really important when we talk about something like mental health, because when you approach different people and you have to go into those deep conversations with them, you should seek understanding in all of that and that you're doing. And that's so key and so critical, because so many times people feel that you're talking at them and you're not listening. But I'm sure that this room understands that, right? Yeah, I'm sure y'all do too. So my background, I'm from South Oak Cliff, and I'm representing today with my hoodie. And this hoodie represents all the different zip codes that make up Oak Cliff. I am from the zip code that is 75216. I grew up on 915 East Pentagon with my mother. Her name is Kimberly Torrance, now Dr. Torrance. My mother was a strong force in my life. But as I've learned more throughout, just in the work that I'm in right now with 4 Oak Cliff, data says a lot. And one of the data points that I discuss with my mom often is what it took for her and my family unit to raise me to be the person that I am today. By proxy of my zip code, the data says that I had a 50% chance of being incarcerated. 50%. The zip code 75216 currently leads the state of Texas with the most people incarcerated. And that's a traumatizing thing to be a part of and to grow up in. And that was the actual thing that made me leave from the district attorney's office and go into the field of education. One day I was reading an article that was titled The Cradle to Prison Pipeline. Are y'all familiar with that term or that concept? I was reading that article, and in that article, it had my zip code at the top, and it showed the amount of people who were incarcerated compared to the percentage of college-ready graduates from the local high school. And that percentage for the college-ready graduates was only 2%. 2%. Currently, there are 800 plus people incarcerated in the state of Texas from that zip code. And this was, back in 2015. But when I saw that, I don't know, it really shook me to my core, because I began to think about myself. I began to think about my peers, my family, my loved ones, all of these different folks that were a part of my life. And then I also began to think about, well, let me think of this number, how many people this is that are actually incarcerated right now. And then I start listing off all the different people that I knew that ended up or in that system that was caught up. And in that moment, I shifted my entire goals and aspirations. I wanted to become an attorney out of undergrad. I majored in political science at the University of North Texas, minored in criminal justice. I had taken the LSAT was on the road to go to law school, had gotten my letters submitted, letters of recommendation, applied, all of those things. And in that moment when I read that article, I knew that's not what my assignment from God was. I knew that I had to do something to reach our youth before they got to that point. The whole reason, or most of the reason, that I assumed that I wanted to be an attorney was to make a difference in my community. I grew up in a recreation center off of Hampton Road that was called Thurgood Marshall Recreation Center. And I love history, and I especially love Black history. And I researched Thurgood Marshall. My aunt actually went to Thurgood Marshall Law School. That was the law school that I applied to go to. Was really excited about it. And when I saw that data, I thought of Thurgood Marshall and what he was most known for, or what pushed him into the spotlight of the country, which was Brown versus the Board of Education, where he represented that case with the NAACP. And I thought about what was Thurgood Marshall actually doing in that case, and why he was doing that. He was doing that case, or working that case, to provide a better education for the youth who come after him, for us that's in this room right now. And I thought to myself, you know what? I'm not going to take the route of Thurgood and becoming an attorney. I'm going to step into the world that he made the major difference in, which is education. So boldly, I joined Teach for America. Didn't have too much of a clue about education at the time. But I knew, like, man, I know I can go into the classroom and I can make a major difference in these young folks' lives. If you all know anything about TFA, you could get placed anywhere in the United States of America. But as I said, my assignment was to be in my community and remain proximate. I was placed at W.W. Bushman Elementary School on Bonneview Road in the 75216 zip code, and I had the assignment of teaching fourth graders reading and writing. Probably one of the most difficult things I ever did in my life. But I'm thankful for it. I'm grateful for it, because what took place in that fourth grade classroom changed my life as a whole. I remember the first day of school. I remember a young woman was the first student at my door. Her name was Shamarius Hill. Just a little cute, beautiful Black girl, eager, excited. You know, the first day of school. Y'all can all remember, being 9, 10 years old, that first day of school excitement. I'm a first-year teacher, so it's like, yeah, man, we about to have this amazing year and all these things. But I learned really quickly the role of an educator. And my students also helped me to understand the role of an educator. Midway through that school year, they said, yeah, Mr. Torrance, you started out too cool. And I was like, what? Y'all telling me that? Like, y'all my students. And they told me how nice I was. And they just let me know how much it meant for them, to have someone that was very understanding to them, someone that truly listened to them and really cared about them. But the difficult switch was always to try to get a kid to learn what a verb was and an adjective, and actually have to go from I'm sitting at lunch with you and being outside to going back in that classroom and having to learn all these different things to pass a STAR test, right? So in those sessions that I would have with my students, again, like I said, understanding is key to me. It's very key. And what I knew is that I was older than my students, and we from the same neighborhood. I'm from Oak Cliff, but they're from a different area of Oak Cliff that I grew up in. So one day, just the organizer in me asked my students, what are some things you all like to see change in the community? And my students began to tell me things that I never wanted to hear from their age. They spoke about seeing less murders, not just crime, but murders that were taking place. They spoke about, blight that they saw in their community, wondering why there were so many abandoned houses and so many abandoned businesses. They spoke about drug usage. They spoke about all of the different things that they had to encounter on their way to school. And I was heartbroken by that. And I often think in my mind, sometimes when I hear or get new information, I ask myself, am I going to be a theorist or a practitioner? And when I receive that information from them, I could have theorized about, well, let's think of these lofty things that could happen, or, let's look at the research behind it. But we needed to do something in that moment to be solution oriented. There was also a frustration that I had as an educator, understanding the space that we were in. The median household income in the community is roughly $21,000 annually. And I understood that, $21,000, single moms, single parent households, aunts, grannies, fathers, whoever it is raising the child, even if it's, two parents with combined income of that much, things that you could take for granted, like pencils, paper, backpacks, spirals, markers, they just didn't have. It was difficult. And that was a frustration. So that year I spent a lot of money on paper, on pencils, and things of that nature for my students. So when we were talking about all these different issues, I was just asking my class, like, what could we do? And we came up with all these different things. And I remember asking students, like, all right, well, let's take out paper to write it down on, and they didn't have it as a whole. So I was like, well, first off, we got to get some supplies for the kids who come in the next school year. And the kids got excited about that. We started talking about this block party type situation. And from there, we organized more and more and more, and we came up with a name. It was 4 Oak Cliff, and we were going to have the 4 Oak Cliff Back to School Festival. And it took off. Being from Dallas, having good social capital within the city, a lot of people came in and bought into the concept of what we were trying to do. And that first year of the 4 Oak Cliff Back to School Festival, it was amazing. It was over 2,000 people who showed up. We gave out over 1,000 backpacks, and we had 4 things that we wanted to work towards: a voter registration drive, job fair, college fair, and a school supply giveaway. And one of the things that was key to me, again, goals, was when people Google Oak Cliff, I wanted them to see positive images. And that festival, that first year, we were able to do that. But I also deal in reality. I believe the team who deals with reality wins. And the reality of the fact was a back-to-school festival was not going to change the overall quality of life of our community. And I knew that it was going to take things such as programs, very intentional programs, to be able to make a difference. And I knew that there was going to be it needed to be a driver of that, a movement for that. And it all played out, at the right time. We were able to get our own nonprofit organization, came up with a mission for it. 4 Oak Cliff went from just being a back-to-school festival to actually being a nonprofit organization where our mission is we aim to liberate Oak Cliff from systemic oppression through a culture of education while increasing social mobility and social capital. And that is a very, very intentional mission statement, because a lot of those things, a lot of those words that are in there, they're heavy words, but that is really our goal. That is our aim. That's what that's what our focus is to do. And a lot of that, Devin mentioned it to me earlier about wisdom. A lot of that wisdom came from people who I probably never met, and the ones who I did meet before me that are now my ancestors that provided that foundation for me to understand. My family is a major part of who I am today. My grandparents owned a local grocery store or corner store in the neighborhood. It was called Ben & Son, and it was in the Glendale Shopping Center, which is in the area that 4 Oak Cliff serves. We call it the Super Block. So if y'all ever hear the Super Block, just know that's where 4 Oak Cliff is. And I remember my grandfather, running that store, feeding people, and the reverence that he would get from the people who came in because of the respect that he showed them and the love that he showed them as well. And I would often hear him tell the stories of his life. My grandfather is from Forest City, Arkansas, a rural small town in Arkansas. And he would tell me, the different things he did growing up as a young man in that community, moved to Dallas. During the era of segregation, him and my grandfather went to Lincoln High School, my granny went to Madison High School. But one thing that they always instilled in me was integrity, and they instilled in me to be a leader. and understanding what leadership was. And I was able to see that, and I was able to learn from that. I remember sitting at my great-granny's house. My grandmother, she grew up in a freedman's town in Dallas. It's called the 10th Street neighborhood. And I remember sitting on that front porch and just soaking up, so much wisdom and knowledge from these elders and the different things that they told me that they had to go through and working in fields, and how they were just in this space now just, sharing stories. And I always soaked in with me, because the one thing that I saw from that, and I heard it mentioned too, was the community that was being built. And as a young person, learning that and understanding like there's something special about that I want to make sure to carry on. So I just brought that in because the family unit is so important, especially when we're talking about mental health. And when I listened to all of them, and I listened to all of the people who came before me, there was a few things that stood out. Well, really the most important thing, and probably my favorite word, is courage, because you can't really practice any other virtue without courage. You have to have courage. And when we think of a space of mental health and people being able to open up and be vulnerable, they have to be courageous in doing that. Would you all agree? I think that in a space to open up to different individuals that are practicing understanding, everyone has to have that in their heart. And this is real hard work that's taking place. I also will say throughout this journey, to build Fort Oak Cliff and to get to the space that I am with the different, degrees, the work that we've been able to do and the successes that we've had. I'm a father. I needed to update my bio because I have a son now as well. My son is a year old, Taylor Jr. So being a father, being a husband, I can't say that I haven't fallen victim to dealing with mental health issues. And something that I learned a lot about as well is trauma, and how much trauma affects the brain, and how much trauma can cause an individual to do things that are out of what we consider the norm. And as I was riding out here, I was thinking about like, man, they asked me to come speak, at a rural mental health forum, and I'm from the city, like I appreciate it, but I'm like, I mean, I'm from Dallas. If I go to New York, they'll say, well, you from the country, but whatever. But I grew up and I've lived in the city my entire life. So as I, took the drive out here, I was really thinking like, what are the common threads when we think about mental health as it is in the city and even in rural communities? And there is something that is a common thread. Everyone experiences trauma at some point in their lives. Everyone. It doesn't matter who you are or where you are. You've experienced trauma, and you got to understand like how to deal with that and cope with it. And a lot of times people don't understand or have the privilege to practice how to maneuver through that world. And when traumatic things happen to them, because we never know. That's the crazy part about trauma, is that you never know when it's gonna hit you. And as I was also thinking about what are the common threads, looking up what trauma is stressful, frightening, distressing events. One thing that is common, no matter where you are, whether you're in a big city, small town, rural community, is that poverty is everywhere we go. And if individuals are living in poverty, they typically have experienced trauma, whether that's not having food, whether that's someone being incarcerated, or even the way that people approach and treat you because of your appearance or the things that you have on or whatever. And I think that when we think of how prevalent poverty is throughout this country, that's one place that our communities can collide and can come together and learn. And I think and I believe that the human experience that we have is to help one another. And I think that there's such a collective group of people who are experience extreme poverty, mid-level poverty, or whatever it is, that don't have opportunities to talk to one another and share with each other how they feel about those spaces. So when I look at a room full of individuals who are stepping into the space of mental health and being able to talk to these subgroups of people, something really special about that. And I really want everyone to understand it. Again, I can't talk to you about the specifics of what you're learning. That's not my background. Those aren't things that I've learned, but I can talk to you about the spirit that it takes to move these things forward. And what I will hope and say to you all is just remain as courageous as you possibly can throughout this work, because I was a young man that needed someone to talk to. When I was in the classroom, I would often serve in that role with no training in it, but just, again, practicing understanding and really taking time to listen to the young people that we were talking to or working with. And again, I often like to focus on our youth. I know it's cliche, but the children are our future, right? They really are. And if we don't do something about that right now, then we are doomed. We are truly doomed, because our children, they have access to so much. The kids today are probably have the most access to information than any generation before themselves. And they're seeking it. You know, they're like sponges. They really are. But you got to understand that they are going to cling to something. And what is that going to be? One of the early events in my life that really shook me as a teenager, one of my closest friends that went to Thurgood Marshall Recreation Center with me was incarcerated when we were teens. He was sentenced to 35 years in prison. And that, again, that let me know reality and what it really is out here in this world, and what could happen, you know, if you make the wrong decisions or take the wrong steps. And just yesterday, we were talking. He's not talking in person, which I wish we could. He's still serving time on that sentence right now. He's been incarcerated for 18 years now. And in our conversations, you know, typically start out talking about the Cowboys and how either disappointed or excited we are with whatever is going on. You know, that's a traumatizing thing, being a Cowboys fan. It's typical, you know, we had those conversations, but we often, you know, throughout the 25 minutes that we get on the phone with one another, we get to the core of what needs to happen. And I always ask him, like, what do you think our youth need? And just yesterday, we had the conversation around, you know, these juvenile detention centers, and even the prison systems and the state jails, or county jails, forgive me. And I asked him, he told me about all these different things that he learned while being incarcerated. And I was like, man, you've had more access to things to talk about your mental health and your well-being than I did in school. And that's something that really stood out to me in our conversation. He told me all these different caseworkers he was able to talk to, social workers, therapists. And I also worked at Zoom while middle school, and I don't remember that being in the school. And it's sad that our young people are getting that type of assistance whenever they commit a crime and whenever they are, you know, behind a cage and behind bars. So when I was asking him about it, I was like, man, what do you think? He was like, man, we over-policing our schools. You know, he brought up his own life experiences about going into, you know, you have campus police officers. You have more campus police officers, at least in the schools that I've become familiar in. There are more campus police officers than there are therapists in schools, than there are social workers, than there are caseworkers. And that's backwards. Every school should have a therapist for the young people, especially when we look at people in schools that we know that these are impoverished schools. We know that this is a teenager that is trying to navigate through life. What are they going to do? Who are they going to talk to? The teacher has a job. Like the teacher's job is to educate, but teachers have to deal with so much. So I often think and wonder, like, what can we do? And it's inspiring to be in this space, to know that there are people who are willing to be front line in that world, to be able to be the first ones that our youth can talk to, that our youth can, confide in, and also provide them with solutions and what they can do to move forward. While I was at Zumwalt Middle School, I built some of the best bonds while I was there. My role at that school was somewhat of a community liaison. I was blessed to be able to serve in that space for a lot of our young people with no technical training, but just going in with the mind to listen and to be understanding. And that's a challenge. And that's a challenge to you all in this space. Everybody in here is going to interact with another person at some point, right? Whether you serving them as law enforcement, or you serving them as a case manager, social worker, therapist, educator, whatever it is. But when you talk to them, make sure you're going into that conversation, not with your preconceived thoughts of whatever this person is or who they may be, but going into understanding them as a whole human being. And that can take you so far. And to go back to our youth and our children, raise your hand if you're familiar with Peter Pan. Y'all familiar with Peter Pan? All right. So some people didn't raise their hands. I'll give you a brief concept of what Peter Pan was. Peter Pan and all the lost children, right? They basically had their own world that they were eating cake and ice cream whenever they wanted to. They was in their own world. But in the story, what really stands out to me is once you became an adult, you had no idea where that place was anymore. You actually forgot about it. It was gone. And that is a powerful concept when you think about our youth and youth culture. As adults, we think we know what youth are doing. We think that we understand everything about them, but it's not the same. It's not the same as when we were youth anymore. It's different. And in the story of Peter Pan, they needed Peter to realize, right, who he was. They needed Peter to really come back to save them from Hook, right, because Hook was trying to wreak havoc. And it was a guide that was necessary. Anybody remember who the guide was in the story? No one remembers the guide for Peter Pan? Well, he was the star in the movie, he was, but his guide was Tinkerbell. You had to have Tinkerbell, right? So I see Tinkerbell as that young person that's coming to us and saying like, hey, I need you. They're shaking us up like, come back, remember who you are so you can come and help us. And that's what we all need. We can't understand youth culture unless we have a guide. And that guide has to be someone from that culture in order for us to deeply and truly understand what's going on in their world. So as you think about it, and as you move forward in this world and in this work, think about Peter Pan. Think about what it took to save those lost children that were being somewhat oppressed, that were trying to be taken over by a whole villain, right? But you can't really get there unless you deeply listen to the youth and really hear what they have to say. Don't go in, we brilliant, right? Everyone in here has gotten a degree, got a bunch of letters after the names at some point. But that doesn't mean nothing to a 13-year-old that you don't understand what's going on in their world. You have to be able to be humble enough to listen and to follow what they're saying to you, and then be able to provide your understanding. And another concept of Peter Pan that was really cool to me is Peter Pan could fly, right? They had the power to fly. And when I reflect and think about the work that we do, there's a man by the name of Jeffrey Canada. Anyone ever heard that name before? Jeffrey Canada started a program in New York called the Harlem Children's Zone. And that's what I based my work off of at Fort Oak Cliff. And Jeffrey Canada, in a book written about him called Whatever It Takes, there's a chapter in there that talks about escape velocity. Now, this is physics, y'all, so this is a whole shift. So follow me. In physics, there's this term, it's called escape velocity. And escape velocity is essentially the speed or velocity that a spaceship has to have in order to go into orbit. We have to get our youth into orbit, right? Jeffrey Canada spoke about programs, how necessary they are, but programs, initiatives aren't enough to keep our youth into orbit because the gravity of the community will always pull them back down, always. So it's gonna take a concerted effort from every single person for every single life that we have to continue to stay with these youth or whoever it is that we're working with, their parents, their loved ones, whoever, to make sure that they can make it into orbit and that they can fly like Peter Pan at some point in their lives. And that escape velocity is the propelling that they need from individuals like us. You know, we're the ones that are going to be able to provide the fuel necessary for them to escape from the gravitational pull of the community, the gravitational pull of the mental health issues that they're dealing with, the gravitational pull of poverty, the gravitational pull of depression, all of those things. It's gonna take you all in this room to provide that fuel. And the process of making fuel is refinement. It takes refinement for every single person in here. You have to, every day, look at yourself and refine. I heard him talking about a strategic plan, and a strategic plan is essentially a process of refinement, of a process of a goals that we're trying to get to. And in refinement, you're removing the impurities. You're removing the things that you realize that didn't work. And once we can refine our fuel and be able to put it into, you know, these people that we work with, I think that they'll have enough fuel to make it into orbit and not necessarily need you anymore to carry them in that space. And then once they're in orbit, someone else will see that rocket that's up there, and then they'll aspire to be in orbit as well. And that's the way that we make transformational change for all the people that we work with. So in all of that, again, the most important thing to me, and I may be wrong, you have to start with understanding. You have to start with understanding the folks that we're gonna work with, the folks that we're gonna have to provide these resources to, but you also have to understand yourself. You have to take care of yourself because this is traumatizing work in itself as well. I know that you bear a lot when you listen to different people. You have a lot of emotions that come over you. So look around in this room. This is a unit. I don't know if y'all all know one another. I heard them say it's strategically set up for everyone to sit in different spaces in here. But understand these are your comrades, weird comrades in this work right now. Because if anyone is doing anything to save a life, they're a comrade of mine, and you can consider me an ally. And I hope and pray that I can be of help and that you all can link hands and link arms with one another to help one another move forward in this work of mental health so that we can be whole as one. Thank you all. You're welcome.
Taylor, do you all have any questions for Taylor? He will take some questions if you have questions for him, just for a few moments. Anybody have a burning question they want to ask Taylor?
Already.
They're gonna let you off.
Appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we're going to take a quick break, but before you do that, there was one line that I heard, and it's relevant to the work that we're doing in this room, and that is, what do we want to see? What do we want to see to change the landscape of mental health in rural Northeast Texas? So we're going to use that line, Taylor. I hope that's okay. All right, take a quick break, restrooms, coffee, dessert, and we'll get started with our panel discussion. Thank you all.